How's it going, guys? Cracked Rack here, and today we're going to be discussing and ranking every single Valve video game from best to worst. Big special thanks to YouTuber Team Drop for aiding in the production of this video, and my good friend Anonymous Animosity for helping with all the research. Couldn't have done it without you guys. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started. Oh, and this is all just me and a few of my friends' opinions. You'll probably fundamentally disagree with this list on multiple levels, and that's fine. Just tell me in the comments what you disagree with and why. Let's have a discussion. Also, just a side note, just because I rank a Valve game as worse than another, doesn't mean it's a bad game objectively, it's just not as good as its contemporaries. Half-Life. Do I really need to explain why Half-Life is one of the best PC games of all time? Half-Life is among one of the godfathers of PC gaming, with the exception of ID Software, which perhaps I'll do a separate video on because they have a lot of classics as well. It single-handedly engineered most of the norms we see in most first-person shooter games of today, and even though it is a 22-year-old game, it still holds up extremely well in 2020. It has a gripping and immersive story paired with an incredible and very memorable cast of characters, and the gameplay offers a huge set of unique and memorable challenges that will keep you glued to your screen. Half-Life really pushed the boundaries of what gaming could accomplish in the late 90s, and most notably to me, most games that came out in 1998 were graphically embarrassing, and games had very little nuance in their combat systems. However, Half-Life, a game that came out in 1998, featured a fully fleshed out combat system and even had a gore system. That won me over as a child, and it still wins me over to this day. I can't recommend this game enough to literally anyone who has the ability to play it. Go do so right now. Team Fortress 2. Team Fortress 2 is one of the most addictive multiplayer games I've ever played in my life. I also have spent more money on TF2 than any other game ever. I don't know why I'm bragging about that. That's kind of fucking embarrassing. I've spent like $500 on this game. Seriously, TF2 is a near masterpiece. It features an incredible and fully memorable cast of characters to play as that never get old because of their golden personalities, one-liners, and interesting, unique abilities. Even though this game is 13 years old, it still has a bustling online community that is as active as ever. On top of the incredibly addictive combat system in this game, there's also a horde of interesting cosmetics you can purchase or naturally earn. While that may sound bad to those who haven't played this game before, TF2 gets DLC right, because it's not pay to win. An experienced player can dominate entire games with a brand new free-to-play Steam account. It all depends on you. Overall, TF2 is a free game on Steam, and if you haven't played it yet, I heavily recommend it. I don't recommend it if you have kids though, because, well, you'll probably get arrested for child neglect. Half-Life: Opposing Force. This game is single-handedly one of the best expansion packs in any video game of all time. To sum it up really quickly, because I have a lot to get through, it adds new content, an entirely unique take on the original Half-Life story, new weapons, new and improved enemies, new gameplay styles. I love it. This game kicks ass. Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2, as well as its expansion packs, as we've discussed before, are some of the best PC experiences of the early 2000s. I don't need to spend too much time explaining why this game is so beloved, because I'm sure you fully know why yourself. Everything from its graphical capabilities of the time, to its incredibly immersive storytelling, to its unbelievable physics engine for the time, makes Half-Life 2 a game that belongs in the Gaming Hall of Fame. Half-Life 2, Episode 2. Half-Life 2 Episode 2 is the second expansion to Half-Life 2, and holy shit! This beats Episode 1 further than the distance between the West Coast and the East Coast of the United States. Episode 2 once again continues the story after the events of Half-Life 2 and Half-Life 2 Episode 1, where Gordon Freeman has to launch a rocket to stop the Combine Vortex or whatnot. And the best part is, this game introduces new enemies, a very unique and different story from the original Half-Life 2, new gameplay mechanics, and more. This game felt like its own game entirely, as opposed to Half-Life 2 and Half-Life 2 Episode 1. And let's not forget that fucking cliffhanger at the end, and if you haven't seen it, I'm about to spoil the ending, so skip past this part if you haven't already played it. At the end of Half-Life 2 Episode 2, we see a major character die, and then after that, we're left in the dark for over a decade. Valve had not released a new Half-Life game for so long up until we got HalfLife Alyx. CounterStrike 1.6. This might be a bit of a controversial spot on this list, but I'm putting CS 1.6 here because it has something special that no other FPS game really has anymore. And that is it just being a pure skill-based experience that doesn't separate players with a ranking system or DLC. That might not be a very popular opinion, but I just really don't like all of the elitism of the newer Valve games, like CSGO in my opinion, which is among one of the most toxic gaming communities I've ever experienced. And most of the toxicity when I play games like CSGO comes from the fact that I'm just a low rank, or I'm just not very good at competitive. CS 1.6, however, is a very chill game. Everyone's playing it just to have fun and get better at the core mechanics of the game. And there's still a very real feeling of unity playing this game in 2020. There's a lot of people still playing it, and this game holds up extremely well in 2020. It still runs very smoothly, it doesn't really look too shabby, and it plays amazingly. Portal 2. 9 years ago when I was a kid, Portal 2 was a genuine addiction. I couldn't stop playing this game at all. It literally almost ruined my family's life at one point because I'd spend 6 to 9 hours fucking around in Portal 2 with my friends every single day without fail. This is one of the most beautifully crafted PC games I've ever played. Its story, atmosphere, physics engine, and set of challenges are unbelievable even to this day. And it has one of the best multiplayers of any game I've ever played in my life. If you haven't played this game before, what are you doing with your life? Working? Cut it out, because you need to play this game before you die, which could be any minute. So funny enough, Left 4 Dead 2 is better than 1, not because of any particular features it has, but because you can play Left 4 Dead 1 in Left 4 Dead 2 in its entirety with better optimization and graphics, so there's literally no reason to buy Left 4 Dead 1 anymore at all. I'm not even going to include it on this list because 2 is the complete package. Getting into the game's general quality, though, it is an incredible shooter with an awesome gore system. One of my favorites of all time, and I love gore. Seriously, I've never played a game in my life that made it so satisfying to kill zombies. This game just holds up extremely well, even in 2020, and was actually just recently updated, so it's still kind of a new game. It constantly has a bunch of killer content being added to it. Go ahead and grab this game, grab your friends, grab a six-pack, grab a bowl, and indulge. Left 4 Dead 2 is an incredible game all in all, as is Left 4 Dead 1. Garry's Mod. Garry's Mod technically isn't a Valve game because it was created by a third party, also known as Gary Newman, but Valve has seemingly adopted it as one of their own games, and it's still an extremely popular video game that utilizes every Valve asset in the world, so it's a Valve game, fuck you. Gmod is one of my favorite games ever, and I have over 1,000 hours on the thing. Gmod was my teenagehood. I played this game pretty much every single day as a teen for hours at a time. My two favorite game modes would be Dark RP and Jailbreak. Those were pretty much the only game modes I played of Gmod, but they were unbelievably addictive. Dark Roleplay is essentially a game mode that allows you to roleplay day-to-day life as a normal citizen. You can be a cop, do different jobs, or even sell drugs with your friends. It's a good time. Jailbreak is essentially a game mode where you're placed in a prison environment as either a prison guard or prisoner, and the game is, to sum it up, essentially Simon Says. Though, I will say Gmod isn't nearly as good or playable as it used to be, and it's gotten cluttered with terrible servers that just pump your computer full of malware, and the game's just really choppy, even on the best hardware, because of this very reason. So, while I recommend you do try this game at least once, just know that its golden years are far behind it. Half-Life 2 Episode 1 was the first expansion pack to Half-Life 2. There's only 6 chapters, and ultimately it wasn't as good as the original in terms of gameplay and mechanics. It doesn't really add anything new, but its whole purpose is to add more story and continue where we left off in the original Half-Life 2 ending, where the spoiler alert, where the Citadel is set to self-destruct. Fun fact, the original expansion pack to Half-Life 2 was supposed to be called Half-Life 2 Aftermath, which makes a lot of sense given the story. Overall, Episode 1 is a solid game if you enjoyed the original Half-Life games and want to see more of the story, but don't expect anything new when it comes to gameplay or mechanics. HalfLife Alyx. Make no mistake, this game's incredible and at some points genuinely terrifying, which is something I don't normally associate Half-Life with. I haven't come close to beating it, but I have experienced it a few times with friends, and this game is just unbelievably awesome. It is physics porn to the max, and I'd go as far as to say it's one of the best physics engines in a game I've ever seen. I really hope that this is just a test for a future Half-Life, because if this is ported to a regular, computer, because you do have to have a virtual reality set to play it, that would be incredible. But this game does suffer, like I said, from being exclusively virtual reality. What the hell, Valve? Are you trying to just insult your player base? You know, the people that notoriously don't have great gaming rigs but still enjoy your products nonetheless? Why would you make one of your most beautiful and lusted after franchises exclusive to a very small portion of the human population that can actually afford a VR set? This is just very disappointing on Valve's part. Half-Life Blue Shift. Half-Life Blue Shift was really disappointing. It added nothing new to the original Half-Life, except a story, and while its new perspective on the story was engaging and interesting, they added no new weapons, no new enemies. There might have been a few new game mechanics, but I personally think it could have done a little more. I do like that you get to play as Barney, someone who becomes a major character in Half-Life 2 and its expansion packs. I don't want to say Blue Shift was a complete failure, because it's not, but I just think the lack of content makes it unnotable. CSGO. CSGO is not by any stretch of the imagination bad, but I'm not a competitive gamer at all. I just don't take games that seriously, and I play them for the story or just to have fun, which puts me at a huge disconnect from this game's core audience. Is it a very incredibly well-made first-person shooter that is both addictive and innovative? Yes. Does it have one of the most toxic and elitist gaming communities in the history of the world? Yes. Personally, when I play CSGO, which is not very often, I'm either hanging out in a surf lobby trying to beat challenging maps, or I'm playing against bots because I'm nowhere near competent enough to play this game competitively with other people. But this is a pretty good game still in 2020, and if you are looking for a competitive shooter to sink all of your time into, this may be a good option. CounterStrike Source. Is this game woefully outdated and ugly? Yes. Does it have an active player base? No. Is it worth playing? No. Everything from this game's physics system to its core gameplay is just unappealing these days compared to CSGO or even 1.6. It's just a product of its time, and while it's not a bad game or anything, like I said, just go play CSGO or 1.6. You'll have a way better time. Team Fortress Classic. So this game suffers and is a bit far down on this list, not because of its quality, because objectively this is a good game. It's a fun, fast-paced shooter that happens to predate one of the most popular and famous FPSs of all time. The reason this game suffers is because compared to its contemporaries, it's nothing. It is so far down on the food chain of quality Valve games. But it is a fun and chaotic game. But its fun and chaotic nature aside, there's no reason to go out of your way to play this one. Just go play TF2, which is free and offers a way more optimized experience. Half-Life 2 Lost Coast isn't a bad expansion pack to Half-Life 2, but it was more so the lack of content featured in it. Of course, Lost Coast's original purpose was to give a new perspective to Half-Life 2, and it's also actually cut content because the original level that's featured in the Lost Coast was supposed to be a part of Half-Life 2 sometime in the middle of the game. It almost feels unfair to rank this game, but this is a video ranking every single Valve game, and objectively, this just isn't as good as the other games. Alien Swarm. Another game that suffers not from being poor quality, but just being super mediocre. Alien Swarm is a very fun and functional top-down shooter game, and it surprisingly still has quite a community these days, even though it came out a really long time ago. But with that being said, it's a very unexceptional game in the lineup of Valve releases. If you want a far superior top-down multiplayer shooter experience, go play Dead Nation or even Burn Zombie Burn. Day of Defeat Source. You will probably dislike this video for this entry on the list, and I fully get why. I understand you. But I do not care about Day of Defeat at all. It isn't bad, but it's just not interesting to me in the least. It just makes me want to go play Counter-Strike, and that's all it feels like. A watered-down, reskinned, old-school Counter-Strike. And that goes for Day of Defeat Source, too, which I'll just lump into this part of the list as well, since the games are pretty similar and also are similarly uninteresting to me. Also, these games are fucking dead. I do not care what anyone says. These games are not alive. They are a corpse being buried in the cemetery. There is only an extremely small portion of the human population who play this game, and they generally are super toxic and take the game way too seriously. No thanks. Moving on. Deathmatch Classic. It's Quake and Half-Life if they had a fuck baby. There's nothing interesting about this game. It's a good game, but I mean it's built off the fundamentals of two other incredible games, so why wouldn't it be a good game? Not worth your time, and I'm not so sure about its player base. Just go play Quake, or Half-Life Deathmatch, which actually does have a player base. Ricochet. So Ricochet is a very bare-bones video game and also a very outdated and clunky one, but it's still pretty cool. Originally a mod for Half-Life, Ricochet is a game that pretty much just plops you in an arena with other players and you have to fire discs at each other in a very Tron-style atmosphere. The game is mostly a challenge of your aim ability, and that's really the hook of the game. This game doesn't have bots though, and its player base is completely dead, so it's pretty low on this list. Ladies and gentlemen, Artifact. Artifact is the worst game in Valve's lineup. Artifact was a real slap to the balls. No one wanted this game. No one cares about a card game, when said card game was created by one of the most capable and technologically advanced gaming companies in the world. If I wanted to play a card game, I'd fucking play Uno or maybe Magic. You know, card games that are of actual quality. So that's this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Give me an idea in the comments of what to cover next.